Hey, folks, welcome to the Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse podcast,
where we bring you hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're truly here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
We often talk about things that people don't want to talk about. However, they need to be discussed to decrease the stigma for healing.
Absolutely. And 2021 is the year of the nurse and the midwife. And we've been highlighting and illuminating cannabis nurses and health professionals who have stepped outside the box to bring cannabis education to their practices and their communities. We are truly in revolutionary times where we're changing how we approach and take care of patients.
Absolutely. We all don't wake up one day and decide to enter the cannabis industry. There's usually a compelling story that goes along with the plunge. What makes someone enter into the cannabis space as a nurse and practitioner? Sherri, will you introduce our guest tonight?
Oh, I certainly will. And thank you for giving me the honors to introduce Dr. Carey Clark. She is the Director of Nursing at Pacific College of Health Sciences, the past president of the American Cannabis Nurses Association. Dr. Clark has been a nurse since 1994 with experience in medical surgical, pediatrics, psychiatrics, home health, hospice care, and parish nursing. Dr. Clark has written many publications on diverse topics, ranging from integrating holistic modalities into nursing curriculum to the oncology nursing role and working with medical cannabis patients. She's the editor of the forthcoming Wolters-Kluwer textbook for nurses entitled Cannabis, a Handbook for Nurses, 2020, which many of us cannabis nurses have contributed to. Dr. Clark is dedicated to educating nurses and patients around the endocannabinoid system, homeostasis, and the safe and effective use of cannabis to support healing. Today, we're going to talk about how this rock star nurse leader ended up in cannabis nursing and honor all of the things that she's doing during these revolutionary times of change. Dr. Carey Clark, you've been on before. Welcome back, and big, giant congratulations on being the first nurse to write the first cannabis nursing textbook.
Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be back and to actually have the textbook in my hand. I don't know if it's going to show up on my screen there because of my background.
In the world of the purple.
The world of the purple. There it is.
Yes.
So it's actually in my hands. And they sent me several copies. But anyway, I think it's always funny when people call me a rock star because my husband and my kids are musicians. So they really are actual rock and roll stars.
Well, I'll tell you, Dr. Clark, you were rocking it out at the American Cannabis Nurses Association when we all did our presentation at the end and we closed and you put that music on and I got a video of you just totally.
Oh yeah.
Great. Right. Yeah, and so really
dancing is good for the endocannabinoid system and it's fun and it's, let's all dance together. Right. So yeah.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. So the book, there's so much to talk about, but I really want to focus on the book. And the reason why I want to focus on it for selfish reasons, because I participated in writing part of it. So
and it's a milestone book.
It's history. It's historical.
It's history.
It's pretty amazing. We were actually Wellen Smith, who is the president-elect for American Cannabis Nurses Association, and I were at a conference put on by the Nursing Organization Alliance. And we started talking to these publishers about we really need a book for cannabis nursing. It needs to be a handbook. It needs to have everything that nurses need to practice in the specialty area. And, it took several months of talking with them back and forth. They were like, who are you going to get to write it? How long is it going to be? And then there's contractual things. And believe it or not, writing a textbook is really kind of a work of love and heart and not a work of necessarily making money. So, who do you get to write these chapters that are only going to get a small stipend, but who really care about the topic and really have expertise in it? So It took, several months to organize. Normally it takes 2 or 3 years to get a book out. And they kind of put us on the fast track, and it made sense because things are happening so fast in this field.
Mhm.
And I'm already thinking of the next edition and things that I would change and
Good.
ways to improve and enhance. But if I could, I would like to read the dedication
Absolutely.
because it's super important to me, and it's why we do the work that we do. So it says, dedicated with loving kindness to all who have suffered and sacrificed through the cannabis prohibition era, including the Mother Earth, the Black, Indigenous, and people of color populations who have experienced disproportionate suffering, the patients in need of healing and palliation, the lawbreakers, the advocates and activists, and the prisoners. May we move forward in harmony as this plant is emancipated.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. You brought a tear to my eye.
Good. That's the idea. I want,
Yes.
for me, one of the most important things right now as cannabis sort of moves out of the prohibition era and into the regulation era is that we don't lose sight of all the suffering that's gone on before and the potential of the plant to heal us in ways, can heal our endocannabinoid system. We know that. And it can help support it through our healing processes using a great palliative tool. But it's also a great spiritual tool. And don't want us to lose sight of that. We have such few spiritual healing tools, plant entheogens as they're called, that as we move into this era, I really feel compelled for us to, explore that more deeply and to also keep honoring the plant and not lose sight of that. So
that is powerful. That is. And you know what? I think it's really powerful for someone who's been a healthcare practitioner and who's the author of this book, to come out and say that publicly, because in the medical space, we try to really fit it into this very small box of it's a medicine. It has nothing to do with spirit. It's just to be used as a tool to heal the human body.
Right.
Yes.
So for you to include that whole spiritual aspect of it, yes.
Amazing. And that's the interesting thing too, when Mark and I started to decide what we were going to present at the American Cannabis Nurses Association last December. And we came up with this whole thing because we truly want to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. So I was like, come get high with us, but how can we make that be enticing? How can we change the perspective or shift the point of view from high being bad to high being good? So that's what we heard. We thought of hope, right? Because most of the patients that come to us have no hope. And
they've lost hope. They've tried every other thing that Western medicine has to offer, right? And they're just at the end of the rope.
And so cannabis, they try it and it brings them hope. And then what happens when you get hope? You get excited. You get you get inspired. And with inspiration, you're filled with spirit, right? So hope and inspiration. And then what happens? You're inspired to do something different, to try something different, to shift, to change your whole perspective. And then from that comes growth, right? So hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. And healing is not the absence of illness or disease, right? It's encompassing doing the best you can with what you have right here, right now, and using all of those tools to reach the new levels of wellness. And that's what cannabis nursing, to me, is all about. Because would you agree? Like in the traditional system, we focus on body parts, disease processes. If we're lucky, we get to mental, emotional health. Rarely do we ever get to a patient's spirit.
Rarely.
So with cannabis nursing, we're kind of reversing it. And we're starting by connecting with that patient.
Right. Well, I'm board certified as an advanced holistic nurse. So that has really helped me to kind of delve into, how do we work with patients in the cannabis care space? It is not just about them using the medicine safely and effectively and avoiding adverse effects and drug-drug interactions. Super important. They need help with titrating their medicines. They need help with managing any adverse effects. They need help with choosing their chemovar and how they're going to ingest. So all of that is important. They need coaching and guidance around how to keep a cannabis diary where they write down when they took it, what medicine they used, what the dose was, what the effects were, and so forth. So they need all that, but they also need really holistic care. So there are things we can do to upregulate the endocannabinoid system, like yoga, exercise, changing our diet to include more flavonoids and have a balance between those omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids, avoiding toxins, sugar, alcohol, all those things that are hard on the endocannabinoid system. And things like acupuncture, osteopathy, massage, all those things yoga, all those things you feel really running, all those things you feel really good afterward. That's your bliss molecule, the anandamide that your body is making. So we are really called to work with patients in a way where we're coaching, where we're using motivational interviewing, where we're addressing their holistic health. And I also want nurses to be really educated in that area too. So it's kind of like when you become a cannabis nurse, you're becoming a holistic nurse, and you're also becoming a coach, and you're learning how to use motivational interviewing, and you're also becoming a role model. We don't want to forget about our role modeling of, professionalism, but also this plant is a medicine, and what are we doing to take care of ourselves? What are we doing around our self-care? What are we doing around our own healing processes? So when we meet that patient in that, what Jean Watson calls that caring healing moment, and I did use her theory in one of my chapters in the textbook, that we are really ready to meet with them and be with them in that space. So we get there by doing our own self-care.
Yes. And that's why Mark and I do this all the time, is like, what do? Is we teach what we most need to learn.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And learning. So what's a better way? It's to learn how to take care of yourself than to teach others how to take care of themselves. And then you have to walk your talk. So it's like, gee, I just told them to not eat Cheetos, and here I am, with the chips and the dip.
So, my mom was a nurse, and when I graduated nursing school, she said to me, you will learn more from your patients than you teach your patients. Like, you're going to gain so much from them. And I was like, okay, Mom, like, I got it, but I didn't really get it. And I don't think I really got it until I started doing hospice care. So I still consider myself to be sort of a hospice nurse at heart. My quote retirement plan is to go back to the hospice bedside someday.
It's just magical. You do learn so much in that transitory time,
That was probably one of the most rewarding experiences, was to help, someone transform from one existence to the next, so the energy transformation from this plane to the other plane, and then being able to help them and guide them and work with their families, and knowing what we know now, cannabis should be offered. It needs to be there. It needs to be in the toolkit. You have that death and dying toolkit of this bag of medicines, the Ativan and the morphine and all of the stuff.
I was just going to say, what's the magic elixir, right? There was the concoction. There was the 3 medicine concoction that's always used.
Ativan, morphine, and the stop your saliva.
Right. Atropine. So
atropine.
Yes, I did hospice nursing in Los Angeles County and then in Sonoma County, so California, and cannabis was legal medically. But what we were told was, just like, if you see it, just don't say anything or ask them to put it away. Like, don't incorporate it into the care plan, even though they could have been medical patients and had the right to use the medicine. We were told, like, just don't go there. And in retrospect, what a few years after I stepped away from the hospice bedside and was teaching, and then found out about how medical cannabis works in the body, I was like, what a shame that, all of those patients ended up over relying on opiates, ended up having poor quality of life, fewer interactions with their family members, when if they had some cannabis on board, they could have had a much better quality of life at end of life. So I know as nurses, sometimes we feel like there's these things that happen that kind of stay on our shoulder, maybe as a way, like kind of in the background, that keep motivating us to do things. And I think that's one of the things that keeps motivating me. I want to see cannabis incorporated better with the geriatric and end of life populations, and of course oncology care as well as a big passion of mine to see that palliation starts with diagnosis, and cannabis can be part of that, and should be part of it if patients need it and can benefit from it. So.
Absolutely. Well, the thing, I think you'll agree, Dr. Clark, that everything that we do or don't do in our lives either supports the endocannabinoid system or doesn't. So as health professionals, we need to know every single thing that we tell our patient to do. Is it good for the system or is it not? And if it's not good for the endocannabinoid system, what are some of the things that we can do to mitigate or decrease, our endocannabinoid system from becoming dysregulated or downregulated?
Right. Definitely.
So quick question. How did you choose your contributing authors?
Oh my gosh. Well, so the first step was kind of putting an outline of the 9 chapters. And then it was really like, who do I know and who is willing to do the work? Because it's a lot of work to write a 75-page chapter and do it, in a couple months time period. So of course, almost everyone came from, I think just about everyone came from American Cannabis Nurses Association. And, it was the matter of like doing the outreach, convincing them to do it for a very small stipend. And that this is about, the bigger picture of what's going on in cannabis nursing as well. Do you want me to go through the chapters real fast?
Yes. Why not? I think I want people to buy the book.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop. Let's try again here. There we go. Cannabis nurses. It's got this cool, let's see.
The hands.
The hands. It's got the hands and a cannabis leaf there. And that was actually, the picture on the front was also actually done by a cannabis nurse as well.
Nice.
So that's exciting. So chapter 1, History of Cannabis and Prohibition. This goes way back. It was written by Llewellyn Dawn Smith, who's our president-elect for American Cannabis Nurses Association. And it really gives you that background around how did it used to be used as sort of a sacred herb and across like centuries, and then how did it get into this place where it was prohibited and suddenly this evil thing. And so it's a great background around that. I also do recommend, if people want to learn more about how we got into the era of prohibition, to read the book Chasing the Scream by Johann Hari. Great book. May though enrage you.
It does. Really does. When you get behind the scenes and really understand what happened, it is enraging.
It is. Well, Mark, Throwback Thursday, we talk history and you have me in tears half the time.
It's just hard to believe.
Right. So that's chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Then chapter 2 is the human endocannabinoid system physiology. This was written by Denise Foster. So if you know her, she's very, very sciencey based.
He is a
very
clinical.
He is a scientist. Yes.
He's a scientist.
It gets it gives
deep.
You that overview, and then it gets deep into it. So if you want to get deep into it, it's a great chapter for that. The next chapter is cannabis pharmacology, from whole plant to pharmaceutical applications. Now, Rachel Parmalee and I wrote this chapter. What happened was I had contacted this one. I couldn't find anybody to write. So I had contacted, I saw an article written by some pharmacists out of a school in the southeast part of the country. And I contacted them, and they said, okay, we have some PharmD students that are interested in writing it. And I gave them the objectives, and they sent an outline, and it looked really good. And then when I got the chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, we can't use this. It just was not.
It was nursing.
It just didn't have the depth. It didn't have.
That's what I'm saying. It didn't have the depth. That's what I think. Nurses are deep.
Right? It didn't have what we need. So I roped in Rachel and Dr. Deanna Summers too, pitched in, but it was one of the ones that we worked on. Even like it was like last minute. We worked on it all last summer. So it's kind of fun when you're writing. We use Google Docs to write the chapters. So we might be in there at the same time writing stuff or reviewing or editing, and then texting each other and look at this. And so that was a great partnership on this chapter. And I think it really came out really well, because it's written by nurses for nurses.
Mhm.
And it gets into the drug-drug interactions. It gets into both the plant and synthetic cannabinoids. It gets into how do you read a COA. So all of those things are in that chapter. Next chapter is cannabidiol, and that is written by the past president. So I'm the immediate past president. The president before me is my friend Eileen Konechny. She's amazing. She also has a book called CBD. What's the rest of it?
I have it around here
You
somewhere.
have it, so do I.
Yeah.
It's right here. I got it.
Okay, you'll get us the full name of that. So she kind of adapted some stuff, but there we go. Healing with CBD. It's a great book.
It is a great book, yes.
It's really, and if you know anyone who's like a lay person and the nursing stuff wouldn't do much for them, that's the book for them. So so she gets into like the dosing, but also the body of evidence. Chapter 5, Cannabis Science Reviewing Trends, another chapter that I wrote with Rachel Parmalee and Barbara Ochester, and we really looked at the NASM, National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, and their 2017 report, which like told us about the levels of evidence with cannabis and all these different disease issues. Well, we thought, oh, well, I wonder what else has happened since then. So we looked at each of those disease issues and looked at some of the more current and interesting research and pulled it out there. At that time, the wonderful tool CannaKeys wasn't available yet.
Oh,
now that is available.
That's such a great tool, isn't it?
Yes.
We use that every single day in our podcast.
Yeah.
It's the best.
So this kind of, when I think of CannaKeys, I'm like, well, you could start with chapter 5 and look at what sort of we found were some of the latest articles, which will be 2019, 2020, right in there. But CannaKeys will have like what came out in the last couple weeks. So
and in this industry, in this community medical space, holy cow, the research, you know, I saw a chart that showed the research that had been done. 2019, it went like this. I mean, it just took off exponentially. So there's so much new stuff coming out every day. You need to have that access to the latest.
And then chapter 6 is the nurse's role providing cannabis care. So I wrote this chapter, and it's really all about like how, you know, the scope and standards of cannabis nursing practice. How do you sort of become a cannabis nurse, motivational interviewing, coaching, all of those great things. This is where I looked at Gene Watson's theory of human care and related that directly to cannabis care. We need to have theories that guide our work. It's, you know, really important for our decision-making process. And her theory just aligns so well with cannabis care. And I'm sure there's other theories too, and hopefully people will start sort of expanding in that area and applying nursing theories to their cannabis care practice. Chapter 7, Advanced Practice Nursing Considerations, was written by Eloise Thiessen. She is the current president of American Cannabis Nurses Association. She has cared for over, today, she said 7,000 cannabis patients. That's a lot of patients.
A lot of patient interaction.
She really
we're getting up there. We're getting up there too. I think it's amazing every single day. Just imagine that's a lot of people to touch. And then you just think about those 7,000 have told 7 friends who've told, before you know it, like cannabis nurses are essential. We are the game changers in this industry. Truly. You know, that's amazing. So chapter 7, Eloise, Advanced Practice Nurses.
Yes. And so really talking more specifically about that role, the legal and ethical and other issues around being an advanced practice nurse and being able to recommend medical cannabis, a little bit different role. And of course, that's not in every state, but it is in a number of states where APRNs can recommend medical cannabis. I heard the other day that the first actual prescription for plant medicine cannabis was written in Germany. Like there has not been, here we are in the year 2021, and because we just recommend, we don't prescribe, but that the first actual one was written in Germany. So that's pretty exciting. Chapter 8, Legal, Ethical, and Advocacy Concerns Cannabis from the Federal to State Level. So I wrote this chapter. This is really my area of passion as well. you've got to be informed. There were some nurses on the ACNA private members page on Facebook the other day, and one of them said, I read that chapter, now I'm scared to death. And I'm like, well,
Oh, right.
don't be scared, but
Be scared, but be
informed.
aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's be aware. And there have been nurses that have had issues with their licenses, and you've got to protect your license. You have to know your State Practice Act. You've got to have your malpractice insurance. You've got to know what's going on when you go into this. You've got to know what your boundaries are.
Right.
You know, you're not just going to jump in and be like, oh, hey, everyone should be using cannabis, right? So
legal risk reduction and cover your ass.
Yes,
that's right.
And then chapter 9, the Cannabis Care Nurses Experience. Sherri, you're a co-author here.
Yes,
do you want
with
to
Marissa
talk about
and
writing
Jody.
that? Do you want to talk for a minute about writing that and what that was like?
Yeah, that was really, it was really interesting. I was really honored that you asked, because I was a new nurse in the cannabis space, been working with patients. And so the cannabis nursing experience was basically, what are we seeing in the communities with the patients that we're working with? And so we talked about all of the different things that we see, why patients come to us, what they're looking for, what their fears are, how they're looking to use the plant, and then different case studies and how we actually worked with those different patients. And then the next part of it is we talked to a lot of different other cannabis nurses that are in the industry and how they got into the space and what they're doing. Because there's so much that you can do in this cannabis nursing arena. It's endless. So find your passion, and you don't have to quit your other job. That's the other thing is, don't quit your other job. No matter what you're doing as a nurse, you can incorporate cannabis education into your current practice, or even have a side gig where you're doing consulting, So that's what we basically covered. We covered all of that, case studies and our experiences in working with different patient populations and how we actually do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really like the highlighting of sort of some of the pioneers. Llewellyn did some of that as well. And I think Denise in the chapter with the endocannabinoid system has some stuff on Raphael Mechoulam. So there are, I really tried to ensure that there was some humanistic feel to it too. Like, what is cannabis nursing, but who are cannabis nurses? And for people to be inspired by that as well. Also to really bring up, of course, that when we wrote it, we wanted it to address the National Council of State Boards of Nursing 2018 call that all nurses be educated in the 6 essential areas related to medical cannabis, which includes the endocannabinoid system, pharmacology, and pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, that you know your side effects, that you know your state laws and federal laws and your own jurisdictions, medical marijuana policies, and that you respect patients' autonomous right to choose this medicine.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So super, super important. So,
and then the number one too, the one that really, the 6th National Council State Boards of Nursing ties in so nicely to your chapter, number 6, that discusses Watson theory of human caring, because the 6th National Council State Boards of Nursing say it's the nurse shall not judge the patient.
Right.
Right. There is no room for judgment in nursing. Right. And Gene Watson's theory says the essence of nursing is human caring.
Yep.
Above all else, be kind.
Right.
Don't judge.
And it's really about her theory. So my whole dissertation was on Watson's theory. My dissertation ended up being close to 400 pages. It was a theoretical dissertation with looking at her theory, and I said expanding and explicating. So relating it to other theories along the way. And so I looked at chaos theory, I looked at integral theory, and I looked at some other theories. And what it came down to me was, of course, back to the idea that we started the podcast with is you've got to care for yourself in order to care for others. And that sounds like, it's like put the oxygen on yourself first before you put it on the person sitting next to you in that plane that's going down. Right. But, it is her theory is very complex. It scares people. But what she's really talking about as well is what's called transpersonal caring, right? So you've really got to have a practice that allows you to center yourself. And it doesn't have to, there's sort of levels of this. It should be something that you do on sort of really a daily basis so that you're comfortable doing it, but that centers yourself, helps you to feel grounded, and helps you to be able to walk into a space that may be stressful and be able to kind of sink in and stop and breathe and be there, like Ram Dass, be here now, be there with the patient, right? And that is what she's talking about. That's where the magic happens. And that's what I loved about hospice nursing, was because I had one patient at a time, one family at a time. I could actually be there. I could hold a hand. I could do a hand or foot massage. I could actually spend time talking and coaching families and patients. And so it aligns so well with cannabis, with the spiritual nature of the plant and the spiritual nature of a truly transpersonal caring experience between the nurse and the patient. And in that space, that is where we both together kind of grow and evolve with our patients, which goes back to, like, you'll learn from your patients. Like, you will grow, you will evolve, you will reach sort of this higher state of consciousness when you are able to create this experience. And my take on it too is that we've all had kind of these deep transpersonal experiences, maybe not necessarily with patients, maybe we've had it with a child, or when we gave birth, or holding your baby for the first time, that very intense experience of being one with another, falling in love. But it doesn't have to be a romantic experience to be a deep transpersonal moment. So
it's that. So basically, what I get out of that is, wherever you go, there you are. We bring the healing environment to our patients by being the healing environment, by being the healer as we heal ourselves.
Yes.
That's it. We're the Go ahead, Mark.
I mean, that I feel like that's what this real calling is for a lot of the nurses who enter the cannabis space, is that they know that, let's say they're working med surg on a floor, working in a long-term care, they don't have that opportunity to actually have that transpersonal experience with the patient, because they're so pushed into just getting the meds done and getting the, taking care of the tasks, right? So they never have that opportunity. So, I think a lot of people are drawn to this cannabis nursing space because it's a reconnection to that. That type of nursing, the real nursing, the essence of nursing.
The essence of nursing is human caring.
I just posted something on my Facebook page. I don't know. You probably have heard of Nurse Blake. He's so funny.
Yes, I love him. I aspire to be Nurse Blake.
He's so joyful. He's so joyful and funny. But he posted about working nights and the different kinds of nurses that work nights. I was like, okay, I did nights for 2.5, 3 years. I was the cold nurse, and I was the nurse that drank coffee until like 3 a.m. But so anyway, but it made me think, night nursing. I left floor nursing because the last night I had 8 patients that were assigned to me. I kind of started to refuse the assignment. I said, I can't take care of 8 patients. I cannot do this safely. And they said, well, we're getting you a nurse's aide. So I accepted the assignment. And it turns out the nurse's aide was for the whole floor of 32 patients. And they had never been there before. So they, all this person was able to do for me was maybe take one set of vital signs. And I went, you know what? This is when I walked out of a patient's room and I turned around, and this was before pain was the 5th vital sign. And she'd had a laminectomy the day before, I think. And I turned around and I said, how are you doing? How's your pain? Like, I'm on my way out the door. And I asked her that because I knew I was going to have to start meds as I'm approaching my 8th patient around the corner. She said something to the effect of like, honey, I haven't been comfortable all day. And I went, swearing inside my head, like, this is not how I want to be a nurse. I do not want this to be a last minute catch that this person's been suffering all day and I almost missed it. Right. So then it's like right away that becomes the priority in getting her the pain meds. And, now a few years after that, probably she would have just been on a pain pump.
Pump.
But at that time, we were giving everyone Demerol and Visceral injections.
I
So
remember that.
yes, remember those days? But anyway,
Yes.
so and, hey, she could have probably benefited from some cannabinoid therapeutics too. But having to go back and catch myself and make sure she got comfortable and get her medicated, get her repositioned, get her ready for the night before going on to the next patient, who I think was probably actively dying. It just made me realize, like, this is not how I want to be a nurse. And that's what led me to hospice nursing, where I could really be from one patient to the next. And not that hospice nursing didn't have its stressors. It has its own unique set of stressors, but at least I felt like that was the ability to be present, to have these sort of spiritual experiences, which to me, that's the greatest thing about nursing. Students get really excited, like, oh, I get to put in a Foley catheter, an NG tube. It's like, okay, that it is exciting, but when you've put in like 100 NG tubes and 2,000
not a big deal.
catheters, then what's going to be
what's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Just to have that connection with that patient, like the holding of the hands, it's okay. And just looking at them in their eyes and having a meditation or a deep breath and helping them to work through anxiety of even learning something different and new. So many different patients come to us, they're plagued with the stigmas and the reefer madness and the fear and the fear of God that's put into them. And what's a true miracle? Really, a true miracle is a change of perception. So as nurses, we're miracle workers, really, as we try to change their perception and how they can use this plant effectively.
Right.
So let's see here. So so it was chapter. So it was chapter 9. So that's it, right?
Last chapter. Yeah, that's it. So but it is a textbook. It is over 400 pages. It has an index. It's published by Wolters-Kluwer, which is a known, publisher of medical and nursing textbooks. It is designed to also be used in academia. So we're hopeful that, hey, there's a tool now and that people can start to use it across academic settings. So
that's excellent. So what do you hope that the readers take away from it? So for the people that, what do you hope that they take away from reading the book?
So I think it can be used in different ways. So one, if you're a student and learning about this, I hope that you take away some good knowledge to use in your practice. If you're already a practicing nurse and you're really interested in cannabis, that it, helps get you either started or reinforces your journey. Right. And that you can really use it as a resource along the way. And then I hope it gets, adopted into nursing curricula. And that's kind of the work that I need to do. So I think you heard that I'm the director of Pacific.
I was just going to ask you that. Yep. What you're doing now.
Yeah. Of health and science. So we're planning on using the book, in our, as we're developing a master's of science in nursing education that also will have a track for coaching. We'll use the textbook in our pharmacology class. And then I'm hopeful that we'll also incorporate it into our RN to BSN classes. We have a medical cannabis certificate program. And so that program there's 2 tracks. One is for healthcare providers. One is for non-healthcare providers. Our healthcare provider track is actually much more popular. It was designed around addressing those 6 essential areas that the NCSBN defined. And it was really designed for nurses. Nurses are the largest number of healthcare providers in the United States, right? There's a lot of nurses out there. But what we found was that a lot of different kinds of healthcare providers want to take it. So Pacific College is the largest school of acupuncture in the nation. And so we have a lot of acupuncturists that take it. We have some massage therapists. We have doctors, DOs, all kinds of people are interested in learning about medical cannabis. And again, it's designed to address those sort of 6 essential areas, what people do after they finish that. We've had people that have gone out and developed curricula if they have the right credentials. for community colleges or other colleges. We've had people go out and start making their own products and marketing them and really being seen as sort of an expert in kind of that industry side.
Mhm.
We've had people get jobs in dispensaries working as educators or just even bud tenders because they have such a passion for it. And I don't want to say
Mhm.
just even because, bud tender can be a really
Yeah,
important,
absolutely.
Can be a great
uh,
resource. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and if they're educated, it can be a
Mhm.
big thing for the patient's experience as well. So,
Right.
we're hopeful to really grow our medical cannabis offerings at Pacific College. We're in talks right now, and I can't quite yet announce where we might head, but it'll be in a good direction
Oh,
to offer more.
that'll be exciting. I was
Exciting.
Yes.
really exciting. I was honored. Eloise asked me to a guest lecture twice last year,
Awesome.
and that was really, really fun to do. And I brought the cannabis nurse experience. I literally brought chapter 9 to the course, which was great. It was good
Yeah,
for people to
I
hear.
think probably about half of our students are nurses and half are not nurses, but
Mhm.
they definitely benefit from understanding, how to work with patients and
Yeah.
um,
It's because it's completely different than what I ever thought it would be,
yeah,
honestly. So working with a patient in the cannabis space doing consulting is completely, it's not even, you're in a different book
right,
because you're approaching how you work with them really differently. You're making it about them. You're not making it about you and what you want. It's not about me, it's about them. We ask them, what's important to you? How do you want to live your life? What are
Right.
your goals? And
yeah.
asking those
For a lot of providers, that's really hard to learn.
hard.
So
Yeah.
what I found, particularly with the acupuncturists that come into the class and have that background experience in working with patients, they're kind of used to like, okay, this is what you need. You need this herb, and like these needles in these places. They're not used to, what are your goals? And maybe they do some of that, but not to the extent that nurses really
Mhm.
do in the cannabis space. So I found that I actually would have them in some of our live synchronous time, like practice their motivational interviewing and
Yeah.
practice what a coaching session might look like. And it's not about saying, oh, I had a student once say, oh, well, I take 5 milligrams of X, Y, and Z. And then I take this in the morning and this in the afternoon. So you should probably try that too, because it might work for you. I was like, oh, no, 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 no. So it was a great learning moment though for me to like,
Yeah.
and then I was able to role model for them with a student with the whole class. Like this is the approach you want. You're
Mhm.
reflecting, you're listening, you're really bringing forth that patient experience and explicating it and getting on the same page with them.
Mm.
And then supporting them with the tools and knowledge and information they need to be successful with the self-titrating medicine. And that's
Yes.
huge.
Right.
It's one
Huge.
of the few medicines that we get to really say this
You get to play with it. You get to
patient.
play.
Yes,
You get to play, and it's safe,
and this
You're right.
belongs
It's
to the
hard.
patient. They get
Yeah.
to decide,
Yeah.
Right.
right?
And that's the other thing too is what I've found with the critical interviewing, and if you're asking the right questions, as you continue along on the consultation, the patient's going to tell you exactly what they need. You're not
Right.
going to have to do anything. All you're doing is you're educating them, and they're going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then they just choose it,
Right.
and it's all in, it's not,
Mhm.
it's, you're educating on them by asking them questions. And and it's like I might think that they need X, Y, and Z, but guess what? If they're not into taking tinctures or
Mhm.
capsules, then guess it doesn't matter what I say.
Doesn't matter.
Right?
Right. It's same thing when you're coaching them around their lifestyle changes so that
Yes.
they can use less cannabis and use it more effectively and have a better life
Mhm.
experience. What are they willing to do? I'll never forget, I had a student that had a patient that was a diabetic, and he was a very, it was like first term nursing student. And he said that the registered dietitian came in to talk to this diabetic patient. And she said, you just need to, okay, so it's not safe to go out and walk in your neighborhood. Well, you just need to get a stationary bike and start riding it. And that'll help control your blood sugars better. And then he said she like literally walked out. And I went, wait a minute here. Like who said she wants a stationary bike? She could afford a stationary bike. She knows where to
Mhm.
find a stationary bike. Like there was no discussion or dialogue around what can you do to get some exercise? What
Mhm.
about your other health habits? And of course, we know besides just like getting physical exercise, being outdoors and being with nature, even if you're in an inner city and it's in a limited way, like looking at a tree,
Yeah.
no, that's good for us, and therefore it's good for our endocannabinoid system, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so
That's one of the things we do too, is we'll say, listen, cannabis is expensive. So I can save you money. And the way I can help you to save money is by doing things that are good for you. So, right.
Right.
So that's
exactly.
motivational. You know what I mean? If you can do something for free that's going to make your cannabis work better, wouldn't
Right.
you do it? I know I do it.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And just make you feel better overall too,
Yeah.
right? So yes, there's a lot of work that we can do with patients beyond just that direct sort of cannabis consultation, but more those holistic things as well. And the book talks about that, and for that too, I do think you have to experience some of that. It goes back to the self-care idea, but get out there and experience those things for yourself. You may think, I'm not really likey. I don't know about yoga, but just try it. There's like, I don't know, all dozens of kinds of different ways to do yoga. So try a bunch of different ways and see if one of them you like. And if not, then move on to the next thing. Maybe Tai Chi is your thing. Maybe Qigong is your thing. Maybe, hiking in nature is your thing.
So many options.
So many different things. And what I found too, and correct me, maybe you probably have too, Mark and Carey, is that when patients start to see a benefit using cannabis and you start to introduce these other things, they're more likely to do it because it works. I'm like, oh God, she told me to do this and this works. Wow, go outside and put my feet on the earth. Go outside, hug a tree. Oh my God, go outside and put my face in the sun. Like these simple things. We find that they're doing it. And a lot of patients too that have come to us, we find that when they're starting off with cannabis purely as medicine, and then all of a sudden it evolves into a lifestyle, canna wellness, once they're able to, right? And that's really, really exciting.
Yeah. And I do think we still have a lot of stigma to overcome. One of the other big things that I think about from sort of the advocacy side is this idea of the cost. So I was at a conference. It was actually Nursing Organization Alliance Leadership's Conference. And as you can imagine, anyone from ACNA there is actually very popular. Everyone wants to talk to us because this is nurses from 50 different nursing organizations that are in leadership positions. But cannabis goes across all those organizations. Every single organization has some level of interest in cannabis. But this nurse was talking to me and she said her mother was on hospice and was using cannabis, and she was having a great experience and really high quality of life at this end of life. But it was costing $900 a month. This was a few years ago, and I didn't get into with her the specifics and what have you. She had 3 children. So this she and her 2 siblings were splitting up the cost. So it was $300 a month for each of them to support their mom to have this quality of life at end of life. So that's one of my really passionate areas as well, is how do we, as we move out of this prohibition era and into the era of regulation. Right now, we're hearing a lot of teasing from Schumer, Booker, and Roy, from our senators, these 3 senators that are supposedly putting together this bill at the federal level that will address cannabis regulation in a way that is supposed to be ensuring that tax generation goes toward vulnerable populations that have suffered, and ensuring that the cannabis space is, regulated fairly and people have access and all of these things. But one of my thoughts that I'm hoping that they get to is insurance covering cannabinoid therapeutics and the palliative. And that
body of evidence supports it.
Yes, and the palliative advantages of it. This should be offered to hospice patients. It should be available to them. It should be part of their covered drugs. It shouldn't be something that they're having to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on every month so that they can have quality of life. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of, social determinants of health. And right now, where you live, really your zip code dictates whether and how you can access cannabis safely, legally, effectively, or not.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not That's
It's not fair.
No.
I agree.
Yeah. A lot of
I
work,
agree, because
but
a
exciting.
lot of work. Yes, it's really, really exciting. I'm literally like, I would pack up and move if I had to. Seriously,
People
that
do.
is how I would,
They're
hands
medical
down.
refugees. They do. They pick up and they move to a state
I
where
would
it's
pack.
legal to have access to cannabis because they tried it in a state where they live and it's not legal and it works. And my gosh, it's, for some people who have chronic pain and have lived in that world for years and years, to get that moment of relief, yeah, pack up the house, honey. We're moving. I mean,
Pack up the house.
they shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah. When Colorado first legalized, that was a huge thing. There was a huge influx of people, parents with kids with seizure disorders and people with chronic pain and people going through oncology treatments. Like all these people moved to Colorado so that they could access their medicine, legally and safely, and that they wouldn't have to face so much stigma and have all these other barriers to try and navigate. I heard of a story of a gal in Utah that was getting oncology treatments and wanted to use cannabis for palliation. And at that time, it was not yet legal in Utah. And so she had to, they had to sort of split up the family so she could be in Colorado where she could access the medicine and her family was in Utah. And of course, people may or may not know that even if you're going from a legal state to a legal state, it's still is illegal to take cannabis across state lines from a federal perspective. So even if you're in Oregon and you have your cannabis with you and you cross over that line into California, which is also an adult use cannabis state, you have broken a federal law. And patients may not know that either.
Know that. I know.
May not care. And I have yet to hear of a patient really. There's a few that I've heard of in states like
I got a great.
I
got a great story. This is a really funny story. This is a funny story. This is a hospice story. So there was a patient when I first started doing cannabis nurses. She had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They gave her a month to live. It was an unresectable tumor, failed chemo, failed radiation. She had gotten her medical card. She had bought all kinds of cannabis. She was this little Italian old lady in her late 70s. And the hospice social workers called me up and said, "Can you help her figure this out? She doesn't know what she's doing." And so I said, "Sure." So I went to her house and we talked about the goals of therapy and how she wanted to use it and why she wanted to use it. And so she was just using CBD rich strains in the daytime and a little bit of Rick Simpson oil at night just to improve her quality of her life. So I left and I thought that was it. That was it. Like literally, 6 months later, literally like a couple of days before Christmas, I get a text message from her. "Hi, Sherry, I'm in my oncology office, my doctor's office. He says it's gone." And I'm like, "Who is this? What's gone?" she says her name and I had to call her up. It's gone. No evidence of cancer. Wow. So this is a woman and this is the part that's so powerful about the story is that, everyone has all these huge, big, giant Rick Simpson protocols. This just shows me that everyone's endocannabinoid system is so different. Yes. And the amount that she needed, she got. To just palliate and to help improve her quality of life. But it kicked in somehow, some way that just the right amount of cannabis was allowed her to have those anti-cancer properties where her tumors were able to go away. So the point of the story is this. So she became cancer-free. She said, "Sherry, I need you to help me get off of all my drugs." And I said, "Well, the doctors are going to get you off the drugs. We'll help manage the cannabis." That happened. A year later, she calls me up. She goes, "Sherry, I want to go to Italy. Can you help me get my cannabis to Italy?"
Oh, no.
But just a really interesting story just to see, how powerful this plant is. Looking to use this plant just to have a high quality of life. And I thought she had died. And look what happened over the course of time. She was just using it just to prolong her life, to have a good quality of life. And here she is. She's still alive 3 years later.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Miracle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, some of the future things I do think is that, cannabis will become a more personalized medicine. They'll be able to look at what's going on with, say, a cancerous tumor, and then they'll be able to look at the best chemovar for treating that, or a combination of cannabinoids and terpenes that will address it best. I know they're doing a little bit of that beginning research over in Israel. Yes. And that's another thing to look forward to at the end of the Prohibition era is let's get on this research.
We've
got this amazing tool, right?
been
Yeah.
hamstrung forever. And you're right. I mean, Israel has just been on the forefront. They're probably 5 to 7 years ahead of everybody else in regard to research and,
It's so exciting.
patents on products. And, so looking to them for,
Guidance.
where we're going to end up going, right?
Yeah.
They're like leading the way. And as soon as we get this federal legality issue taken care of, man, the amount of research that's going to just pop up and that will be able
It's going to be overwhelming. Like, it's going to be like, okay, what's happening today? Right? What's new?
Yeah.
What's been discovered? What's shifted? What I really love too is that there's something for everyone in this industry, as far as when it comes to, if you're going to use it, how they're going to make it, they're going to take it apart and make it specific. If you want to use whole plant, there's so many different ways. There's something for everyone to be able to use this plant, whether they want to use it as a pharmaceutical or whether they want to use it as cannabis wellness. I think it's fascinating. And I think that it's amazing that we're going to have the opportunity as nurses to lead the parade and guide how this plays out.
Woo.
Yes, very exciting. And I'm really hopeful. I can't wait till this legislation comes out from 3 Democratic senators. And as I said, they keep teasing it, but I don't know if they're waiting for 420 for it to come out. I don't know what they're waiting for, but with everything going on with the pandemic, a lot of this has gotten pushed to the side. In 2019, there were 3 different bills introduced that all are now just kind of stuck and dying in committee. So hopefully their efforts will kind of liven things up again and move us forward. So that's my hope.
Yes.
Awesome. Excellent. Excellent. So Pacific College, where can people find you?
Yeah. So Pacific College of Health and Science. So that's just pacificcollege.edu. You can email me if you want there, and that's just clark@pacificcollege.edu. That's a quick way to find me. You can find me actually still through ACNA, though I'm no longer active on the board, and that email is Carey@cannabisnurse.org.
Great.
So I'm pretty easy to find, or you can just look me up and you'll find me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, sure, all the normal social media places.
All the same old familiar places.
Yeah,
that's it. So I'm really, really excited. I'm going to close by promoting your book one more time. So thank you so much for donating a book. We're doing a giveaway on 420. So it's going to be the 420 potluck giveaway. And so Carey Clark is going to donate a book that we'll be giving away to someone. So make sure you tune in, the In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio. And so the promotion of the book, Get Grounded in Cannabis Education, Clark's Cannabis, a handbook for nurses. This groundbreaking new guide addresses nursing skills and responsibilities in cannabis care, including the physiology of the human endocannabinoid system, cannabis care as it relates to specific disease processes, the history of cannabis, advocacy and ethics, and the ins and outs of cannabis dosing, delivery methods, side effects, and more. So it's essential for all practice areas. This is a timely, much needed foundational resource for both students and practicing nurses who want to provide knowledgeable and effective medical cannabis care. This book was just released in January of this year. It's on Amazon, and really, really honored that we were able to come on here today to share that. And we hope that this book blows everyone out of the water. Seriously, it's like the history
says the same thing. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Well, it's I feel really honored and blessed to have been able to lead the way with this and had some great authors to work with. And it really is a work of love, and getting it out there and helping to change the landscape is what's most important. So I hope people do find it useful.
Yes. And I just want to say thank you too, from the bottom of my heart. You've been a mentor of mine. I just remember you've been I've been mentoring for years now. And so really, and you introduced Clark's, Watson's theory of human caring. And so really, I just want to say I'm really grateful. You've been a huge inspiration to me, and I truly, my work is in relation to everything that I've learned from you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. So, it's that honor and pleasure. And I really feel like, I feel blessed to feel connected to the plant. I feel like I've been called to do this work, and that in some ways the spirit of the plant kind of uses me in a good way
Yeah.
to help get that
Yeah.
message out. So it's
Yeah.
definitely my pleasure. So
Wonderful.
Great. All right, everyone. This has been another awesome special edition of Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse podcast with Dr. Carey Clark, Clark's Cannabis, a Handbook for Nurses. And Mark, I'm going to
Hey.
ask you, what's it all about?
Well, Sherri, you know, I hear it all the time and I believe it now. You've told me it's about living your best life and helping others to do the same. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Love you all. Thanks for showing up. See you soon.
Thank you.